The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com. And by the Change Execution Group. Visit 360lifetransformations.com. Before we get into today's show, I want to invite you to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on a new platform. It's a text-based platform called Community. To join, all you have to do is text my community number, and that number is 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042. The first message is automated. It's just to get you set up and added into the system. Everything after that will be direct engagement with me. This platform will allow you to stay up to date on everything that we're doing on the Healthcare Security Cast, as well as engage with me one-on-one. Also, as we move forward, there'll be other opportunities to connect with study groups and special interest groups. Your information is kept private, and you can opt out at any time by simply texting STOP. Again, to join, just text JOIN to 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. Right now, text messages can only be received from Canada and the U.S.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Wednesday, September the 9th. Today we're joined by Sean Boney, Corporate Security Manager at AdventHealth. And let's get right into today's discussion. Today on the Healthcare Security Cast, we're joined by Sean Boney. Sean, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Brian. Honored to be here.
Awesome. Honored to have you. Now, I always like to learn a little bit more about our guest before we dive into the conversation. So who is Sean Boney?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll try to keep it succinct. Military veteran, I think, is one of the things that I'm most proud of. I spent 9 years as a military police officer. I joined when I was 17 on a waiver from my parents, so that was a big deal at that time when I joined. From a very small farming community in western Michigan, oldest of 6 kids, grew up on a several generation farm that survived the Great Depression. So foundations of hard work, long hours, things of that nature, and just always knew that I wanted to help people, and ended up in public safety and security, and here I am today.
Awesome. Now you touched on it a little bit there. Actually, we have some similarities. I also come from a family of 6. I'm the youngest, however, so we're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. But you did touch on your career a little bit. Could you take us through your career path and give us a bit of a better idea of how you've gotten to where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. When I was there in my mid-teens, I always thought that I would have joined the Secret Service by now. Absolutely intrigued with it. Any school papers in high school wrote about it, or speech class spoke about it. A junkie for any movies. Remember, back in the day, the Clint Eastwood in The Line of Fire was one of the best ones there, and things of that nature. And joined the military police. And, we were just talking off with the recording about September 11th coming up and everything. And so I joined in 99. Then September 11th happens and changes the entire face of what security and safety really looks like as a society. And I started to take some turns. I was in the Army Reserve, by the way. I should also mention that. But in those days, after 9/11, there was no distinction between Reserve, National Guard, or regular Army. You were deployed so much or going to school. it was very full time. I tried making it through a community college and things of that nature, and had to keep splitting because I was deployed. So I ended up being deployed a couple of times, once in support of Noble Eagle, which was the homeland side. And I spent time doing police operations at Fort Hood, Texas. And then a little while later, wasn't home very long, and I went over to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. And by then I was a junior leader at that time, a sergeant, and I ran ship security at large prison for the Baghdad Central Correctional Facilities. That was a great learning experience. Came home safe. All my friends and downlines came home safe. So, very rewarding experience. Came home and was looking for a new full-time job. I had dabbled in some part-time security work at a resort and a museum in the meantime, while I was able to be on reserve status. And I found a position very uniquely identified as security police dispatcher, Spectrum Health, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was a full-time job with benefits at a notable health system in the area. I've been an EMT volunteer as well with a rural agency, as I got linked in through the resort I worked for that was in the area there in West Michigan. And I knew it was a great place. So I went there, got the job in about 2005, and just didn't even realize the whole side of healthcare security, and ended up growing with that department, increased responsibility, probably every 18 months to 2 years, doing everything there from, I didn't like dispatch long. I didn't like sitting in the four walls. They didn't have windows. So I found myself taking desk reports because I knew how to write them and things of that nature. I ended up running the lost and found, which if anybody that listens to you has that, that's not fun. And if you forget to wear gloves or anything and you get into some lost property that's all gooey or something, no, thank you. And several different layers of security officer at that organization. You probably heard me just mention security police. So Spectrum Health has Public Act 330, which has arrest powers. Police authority really is the broader term there. So doing that, and then their shift supervisor to their special teams on training officers and healthcare workers, risk assessments and physical security technology, regional security supervisor, so really creating a statewide network at the smaller, I guess people call it offsites, or, and then also regional hospitals, which, security back in the day may have been double duty as a maintenance worker, that just, he was a male and could look tough and went into the room. So, figuring out how to replace that with professional security services. And then fast forward to working with a gentleman, Bill Marcisz, who I know you've had on the show before, here in Central Florida at AdventHealth, then Florida Hospital, and taking over their brand new role of corporate security manager and addressing those needs in the corporate space. And I think your questions that you've asked before, I'll save some time and get into more deep dive in that in a little bit. But from the 30,000 foot view, I think that carries me over pretty well.
Awesome. You've been a part of a couple of really strong, really great programs. I'm sure along the way, as you've progressed in your career, you've had some mentors or influencers who've really impacted how you conduct your day-to-day. Who are some of those influencers, and how have they impacted you?
Yeah, there's many of them, but I singled out 3 or 4 that I thought for these purposes that I would talk about. My first manager, Sullivan, she's currently a director over on the east side of Michigan, really shaped the way of my thinking and the thought process of staying in healthcare security as a career, not just as something that retirees from a department like corrections or law enforcement or military go to, or college students. So she really, got my wheels turning. Then some other directors that I've had, Brian Uridge, He was a director at Spectrum as well, and then he's currently deputy director of public safety at University of Michigan. We still stay in contact, sometimes weekly. He was a huge influence on how healthcare security could also think quasi law enforcement, but still maintain our own culture. And I know I want to touch on that later in the show, but using community oriented, what they would call policing, but community oriented security in a healthcare model. He was instrumental in helping me think that way. Then Bill Marcisz, I know I just mentioned him, amazing leader. I don't think it gets any more calm, cool, and collected than Bill, and keeping you level, challenging you with new things, pushing you to get outside comfort zones, things of that nature, while still honing in on strong points. And then also our administrative assistant, so my director's assistant at Spectrum, Molly Ferguson, is absolute dear friend and mentor as well on challenging the ways that you think and power and authority. Your director has power, but really there's a lot of authority that flows down to those that are in the immediate sphere of influence, and how to run day-to-day operations in a complex matrix security environment. Those people definitely, and then some, have some of the biggest influence on me.
Awesome. Yeah, some really great names there. A lot that I'm familiar with, and I can definitely see that about Bill being the calm, cool, and collected one.
Definitely.
Now, you alluded to this earlier, but much of your focus is on the offsite facilities, as we put it. We spoke prior, and you'd mentioned that you'll hear some staff say, offsite to what? What's the approach taken to address this feeling and making those staff feel more engaged and more a part of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And that it does make you chuckle a little bit like, hey, what? This is a multi-million-dollar facility out here just because it isn't connected to what some might call the mothership. How do you get them connected? And that is through good old-fashioned empathy, listening. And I just brought it up, the sense of community. You've got to get out there. No one is more important than them at the time. Listen to them, which is sometimes, I know me as that AAA plus personality. Sometimes, your confidence can just exude and people will think that you're not listening to them, or maybe sometimes you are, because you're listening to respond, not listening to hear. And sometimes you have to get uncomfortable with that as well. And figuring out what's going on there. We have these big organizations that want to have one culture and one personality and one way of doing things. But yet a lot of these locations still want to hold on to some sense of their own culture. Maybe it's based on their community or their town size or what they have, what some of the services they provide, and some of maybe the clientele that they cater to or the types of staff that they hire. I think it just goes on and on about what builds their culture. And if you can figure out how to embed yourself in that and almost reinvent yourself over and over again and still get along with all of them, that's the secret to success that I have found. And it's not easy. I've stepped on toes. I've been criticized and even scolded, a long time ago when I was just first getting going, because procedurally you should do things very consistent, but there's just some times where there's some give and take and some compromise that has to happen so that, again, everybody can function and people can hold on to that culture.
Right. It's funny. Obviously, communication, I should have assumed, is right at the middle of all of that. What are some of the unique challenges that come with managing a large number of facilities that are, these offsites?
Trying to remember whose culture's what and who's who, especially as security as a function, because even if there aren't officers there, we all know better that somebody is providing that function. Whether it is somebody in facilities or maintenance or front desks, somebody is burdening, taking that burden with all of the responsibilities that come along with it. So they also, as a culture, especially through mergers and acquisitions, may have had security in some bucket that didn't make sense. Typically it resides with risk management or a lot with facilities, sometimes human resources, but I've seen it report to the CNO, the CFO, the COO, and all of these different places. So that's number one. Remember, whose culture is what? Take a breath. Okay. Doing a proper assessment of the areas. Who has crime? What's the geography? What's the citizens like? What's happened in the area? What keeps people up at night? How do the staff feel? That's a big one. Do they have organized security? Do they need it? If they don't, do they need it? Certainly, if they have an ED, I would say that yes, they will need it. Everything along those lines.
Awesome. And I'm sure in these environments, the perception and expectations of staff work in these facilities are a very important element as well. Just making sure that they feel safe, although they're off the main campus. What are some of the ways that you instill confidence in the security program to these individuals?
Getting the team to all act the same. So one of the things that we realized when I was up in Michigan, and then I'm trying to work out here in some similar ways, even though Central Florida has some diversity to it that's not the same as Michigan, is getting all those officers to empathize as well and listen, and also think, like the mentors that I mentioned, think about how this is a great career. This is rewarding. Go out there and figure out your place in these places. So getting the healthcare security team to act as part of the care team. They are. There's no way about it. And not focusing on being quasi law enforcement or anything, because even with police authority like Spectrum has, you're not. You're 99.99% of your job is to think and be like a member of the care team, because law enforcement's existed since Middle Ages in Europe. Healthcare is as well. There's two unique cultures that you can't just sit there and grind together.
Right.
And we work as one of them. We're like any other resource or other team member that has a place, has a voice amongst that care team to create some great outcomes for patients and families and employees while we're there. So culture, care team, big things. Highly mobile and nimble is going to be the thing. I am not a proponent of parking security at any one location because emotions ran high for a little bit. Maybe there was a domestic violence situation involving one or a few members, and then it goes down. I see that as being some old ways of healthcare, of spending money on a problem and then kind of forgetting about it. And then you go to a new place, or maybe you get a new location during a merger or acquisition, and you're like, why is security here? It makes no sense. Oh, they've just always been here. I can't remember. Things of that nature. And then next thing you know, the security is front desk, greeting interviewees, doing the fire extinguishers and a few other things, but they haven't dealt with tackling workplace violence and goodness knows when, and some of those important mandates that come along with security. Sure, there are those customer service pieces, but I think that there's got to be a little bit more of it. If it's more like a greeter or receptionist, then it probably is, and probably needs to be that position so that we can more use those resources from the security officers in a better location. The whole do more with less concept, I'm sure, has really hit us and our peers over the last several years, and it's going to continue to. And the finance department and any agencies, third party that they come in, to audit and things of that nature, that they're going to be on you to make sure that you're utilizing your resources and assets as best you can before they decide to start telling you what your budget is and how you can spend it and those sorts of things. And then lastly, there's a few more, but the other big one is training. I think that all of our people that are out on those mobile teams, or that they're stationed at a location that is considered ancillary, but is just as vital to seeing the patients, is training. You can do some great things with security awareness training, not being on your device, your personal device, like your phone. Workplace violence prevention, knowing your organization's definition of workplace violence, what it looks like, what it feels like, how to spot pre-incident indicators or pre-incident attack indicators, responding to active shooter, active attacker, and then finally how to de-escalate somebody, and the warning signs and your resources of, well, which police jurisdiction are you in, just to make sure. Do you have access to security swiftly? What can we do to prevent, respond, and then also after the fact, deal with this? So crisis and SISM, critical incident stress management, employee assistance program, things of that nature. All of those resources, if you have those very knowledgeable and nimble team members, they're going to be very cohesive. And one of the things when I send my people out is we got to be our own worst enemy. And what I mean by that is the phone's never going to stop ringing, and we're going to be so inundated. We're going to get data to learn more about this and hire more people that are out here when, we're just an army of a few right now that can go out there and handle these things. But if you start offering that, amazing service because you learned what they wanted through empathy and listening, they're never going to stop calling you. They're going to trust you. They're going to bring you in there. And that's when you're a member of the care team.
Excellent. And obviously towards the end of that, training was kind of the area where you shifted focus to. And I'm just curious, is your approach that the staff who are working at these different facilities or these offsites, is there a difference in the training that they receive, or is it just the way that the training is delivered? Because it sounded like it was kind of somewhere in between that. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I don't see offering it differently. COVID's changing some of that, which I think we're all learning new things now. So I wasn't a big fan of digital learning, especially something that's like a pre-recorded computer-based learning, or some might use like a health stream or something. That seems to be the answer to a lot of places a long time ago. And even if you look at some of the OSHA and Joint Commission things that's come out in the last decade, they recommend training, and I perceive that as the classroom. However, we have had a lot of distance learning now. So I've done things via Teams and things of that nature. I can get comfortable with that, but at least there's that emotion and that connection with somebody, and that helps with your empathy. Hey, that healthcare administrator or that chief nursing officer or executive, they care about my safety. They brought in the regional security supervisor or leader, or the corporate security manager came in. They got eyeballs on my workplace. That means so much to me as a healthcare worker. I know that they care about me because I just saw them there, and I feel better because of it. But also, when we have this training, I know you had Brad Estep on a few months ago, and he and I worked very closely together when we were both at Spectrum. I'm creating these programs that, again, take the story from the front line, repackage it, and deliver it to them. Some might call that storytelling. And I know it's very hard to not get stuck on rabbit trails and things of that nature when you're delivering said training. However, when you base it on the real stories on situational awareness, workplace violence prevention, and de-escalation management on real stories, but you change the names to protect the innocent, I think that hits home 1,000 times more than other canned things, or even things that we might bring from our other careers. I rarely, if ever, mention military police to anybody, because how does that relate to a nurse in an ED? They want to hear stories from the healthcare. And so we can relate that to them based on, the healthcare model. And it's just so much more seamless to be seen again as one of them when we deliver that. So I try not to make it too different. To go back to your original point, to make sure I sew that up, is a lot of it's very consistent. However, you might change a few pictures or things of that nature to empathize with them. Because, oh, I see a picture of our urgent care network. I'm an urgent care certified nurse's assistant. A lot of the same things are happening to me, maybe with less frequency, depending on where I'm at, than a busy, bustling emergency department, but it's there. Or learning about home health, because offsite, it doesn't get any more offsite than people that make house calls to our patients as well, to keep them well and keep them in their community. So that's been something as well. That was another one that Brian Uridge and I worked on extensively while we were there together, is figuring out their needs and how to go about it, having them take us to, we went on ride-alongs with them, good old-fashioned ride-alongs that you take from the police world and you relate it to them. Loved it. Again, you make their problem your problem and you're going to be successful.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier as well was, in some of these environments, obviously there's not a actual security presence with a security officer. In the environments where it's not the norm to have a security officer, how do you address that concern?
The training is a big thing. See something, say something, paramount. It's free, pretty much, besides the time that you invest in doing that. Letting them know how your security works at your organization, because we're all different, hence that culture. And then security technology. I know just enough to be dangerous in that. Worked on project management with card access and several different types, from Andover Continuum to Linnell and everything in between. Your card access and building a strong perimeter is going to be your friend. And those that don't, dabble in that or don't know the difference between analog and digital could hire a competent consultant to come in and give them some, pieces of what they could use there to build that strong perimeter. Surveillance cameras, and the right kinds in the right places. Also, duress alarms. I'm a big fan of mobile duress, because what did we do back in the day? Oh, put a panic button, much like at a bank teller, underneath the nurse's station. Well, how many things happen at the nurse's station? Unless the patient has come out to them, the majority of incidents that I've found are at the point of care. That could be the bedside. Point of care is anywhere where the patient is, and typically they're in a bed, in a lavatory, in their own home when you're a visiting nurse, and things of that nature. And then your other devices, wander management, infant abduction systems, mass notification systems like Everbridge and the like, that can get the word out simultaneously to a broader number. Really harnessing that technology. Also remote intercoms as well, with video capability, so you can tell who you're letting in. That goes along with that perimeter piece.
Excellent. Now, we've covered quite a few topics here just with relation to offsite facilities or off-campus facilities. Is there anything I haven't mentioned that you'd like to discuss further?
Yeah, we did hit a lot, didn't we? To work competently out there in that environment, I think that it's wise to soak up as much as you can from all of our disciplines and not worry about deep diving too much into any one area, such as operations or technology or training or communications. Knowing enough about those and then surrounding yourself with the right people that can help you get into the weeds with all of those, I think will make for a really great department, but still having at least a little bit of familiarity for those, because you have to remain nimble, like I said. Nothing is deep, and when you're constantly on the go, like myself or others that I'm sure that are out there in similar roles, you're just constantly on the go, and nothing can put more pressure on you than thinking you need to be an expert at all of those little things, when trusting others to bring them into that circle and go down there, even if it's security officers. What better mentorship is there than to teach entry level or somebody that's just gotten into healthcare security a lot of these things? They're the next ones. And I don't know about you, I bet there's a lot of other of your listeners that would love when you ask a little kid in the future, what would you like to do? Among pro athlete or YouTube, social media influencer that today's kids want to be, is healthcare security professional could be up there with police, fire, doctor, lawyer, and all that sort of thing. So really mentoring that next generation that can take all of our place, because we all have to retire at some point, whether we want to or not. That's another big piece that I don't think that we got into. And one of my passions, among all of this other stuff, but is also getting involved in our security culture training and leadership academy stuff from not only our security department, but I've been a guest speaker at some of our things with the care team people. And again, that is your bread and butter right there. The more you can get in front of that care team member and be seen as a member of their community, they're going to keep coming and really seeing your department as a very relevant answer to a lot of the things that we're all experiencing.
Great. And actually, one thing I'd like to kind of ask you about is the security industry associations. Are you involved with any of them? I know I myself have been involved with quite a few.
Yeah, so I've been a member of ASIS, or some call it ASIS, for the longest. And that was actually my first designation that I got, was my CPP. I was doing a lot more physical security at the time as a junior leader on the physical security team. So I got that. But then I had always heard of IAHSS, and Spectrum started moving that route in my last years there. And then Bill Marcisz is a huge supporter of IAHSS. In fact, when I joined Florida Hospital at the time, now AdventHealth, program of distinction. So wonderful to have all of the different certifications written into the job descriptions and the like. And last year was my first ACE, and I was really impressed. I got my CHPA last year as well. So even, I've been in healthcare for 15 years and, finally get that. So definitely see that association membership and that credential as a huge impact on my career. And then the beginning of this year, Bill and I and our investigations manager, Erich Barrett, with AdventHealth, all joined ATAP this year. So that is my third association, and that is for threat assessment professionals. I'm sure many out there are dealing with threats more and more. That can just eat up so much of our time, whether or not they're serious or a veiled threat, or maybe they are absolutely serious. We can't take that lightly. And so we as an organization are putting a massive investment when we're not battling COVID-19 into their workshops, their training, thinking like them. And then they also have their own association certifications that you can get as well. You can get your CTM through them, I believe, Certified Threat Manager. And that is something that we are investing in for, if not 2020, 2021, hopefully. I doubt anything's going to slow down, so I'll just have to make the time to dive into those books and get going with that. But I've been finding that's great. You can think of what they call the howlers and the hunters, and people that make a lot of noise and, I'm going to find out where you live and things of that nature because I didn't get what I wanted, whether it was my wait time or the medications or things of that nature, or what's more serious, probably the more intimate partner violence that's related to somebody at the facility, or a serious threat of, somebody that's showed up or is borderline stalking an executive or a prominent physician in your health group. That is definitely helping us with our day-to-day operations.
Awesome. And one thing that you mentioned there, the howler versus the the hunter, made me think back to something early in my career before I got into healthcare. I was doing mall security, and I used to get threatened because I was in a, not in a great area. I would get threatened almost on a daily basis, or someone was going to come back at when I was done work or what have you. And I remember, I had a bit more of an arrogant attitude, so I'd say, yeah, you know what, I'm done work at this time, and whatever. Like, went months and months of that, like almost on a daily basis. Then I remember one day I was locking up the mall, and after closing time, you're the only security there, and for whatever reason, I just had the inclination to go by this one window that I never walked by when I was doing my lockup patrol, but I looked out the window and saw a guy who threatened me like 2 weeks earlier standing out by my car. And at first I was like, you know what, I should just go deal with this guy. But then when I looked a little bit farther down the parking lot. There was four guys that were like my size that were there with him. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a different approach here. I called the police and I just waited for them to show up. But yeah, you just kind of made me think of that. But sorry, I'll get back on track here. As far as your career, like you've worked your way up basically from the entry level ranks. What advice would you have for somebody who's approaching the idea of taking on a leadership role in a healthcare security environment?
I'm glad you asked that. Several individuals that have been in my teams. And one of the things I've learned from my mentors is to mentor others. You got to find a mentor. Somebody in your department, somebody outside your department, and I don't think you can have too many, but some people that you can check in with and that will care about you enough to get a cup of coffee once in a while, or if you're not cohorting with them and you don't see them every day, that you can Zoom with them or pick up a phone or something like that and check in. Find those mentors if you're thinking about it. Also, school. I thought I could ride out that military service record and some of the awards and then even these certifications and keep going, and then thinking like, oh, I'm getting to be my 30s now. This is going to be rough going back to school, and family and obligations and things of that nature. You got to do it. I think you've got to do it. When you've got all these MDs, PhD, MHA, everybody's letters are falling off the end of their name. You've got to get your credentials yourself. You're chuckling and you know it's true.
Yep.
I didn't mention this, and I'm very proud of it, actually. And I don't know, I got my master's in business with a healthcare concentration, because who knows if security is the end of the road with me. Maybe I'd like to do ancillary support or something like that. A lot of health systems end at security director, so there might be, higher callings than that. So learning, and it doesn't hurt you to learn how your business makes money either. In fact, I think it behooves you to learn, well, why are we in such hard times when the surgeries stopped at the facilities, the elective surgeries? That's very helpful to learn how your department makes money. But getting a degree, and probably if you've already got one in criminal justice, not to knock it, but I think any police officer out there would tell you an associate's or a bachelor's degree is fine in there, but then your next degree, whether it's your bachelor's or your master's, get it in something else. Finance, accounting, public administration, something else that's going to help you with your leadership skills, or even something in leadership. I think several of those, from finding a mentor, being a mentor, getting your degree and certifications, will go a long way. And being uncomfortable. Volunteer for those projects. Don't wait to be voluntold. Get out there and invest in your community and yourself. And if your community is your workplace, I don't think you can go wrong there. People are going to see you again as that empathizer and that listener, and being seen as more humble. Because you mentioned arrogance earlier. We can all have that. That's that AAA. I think that we're an industry. I was just telling our HR professional the other day, we're working on some hiring and things of that nature, and they wanted to know what my opinion was for doing something a certain way. And that is because we are a profession built on worrying about what everyone else is doing. We're always seeing something, saying something, and you better believe that our security officers and our junior individual contributors, they're doing that to their security leaders as well. They want to know what we're doing, what makes our roles unique, things of that nature, especially the newer generation. I'm the tail end of millennial, and I love being part of structure and a chain of command. And with the military, you'd think that'd be obvious, but there's always that nice thing that makes something with a unique twist that much more desirable for your career path. So getting on special teams like investigations or physical security, technology, or even K9 is a big one. Some of those things, those are, I think, what more of the new generations are going to be looking.
Awesome. Now, for yourself, what can we expect to see from you moving forward?
I'm going to get into the threat management one way or another, whether I have to glue that book to my head and sleep, have it under my pillow or what. That's going to be monumental in the next year. Continuing to grow our corporate program as much as I can with what budgets allow and things of that nature here. We're doing assessments right now at some other very non-traditional departments that might need security and come in. Assessing those to building a training program for this organization for our clinical people that doesn't break the bank with sending people away or getting them a certificate from one of those 3-letter agencies that you know what I'm talking about, that do a great de-escalation product, but borrow from each other. Also, one of the other things that I didn't mention that ties into associations and training for us is executive protection. More and more, there are things out there that think that you're figureheads that are in the light, and that marketing puts them out there, and you're in your broader community, you're in your city, you're in your state, you're working with state legislatures and governors and things of that nature. There's a whole new territory that's beyond the healthcare traditional security program. So finding the assets and the training that are out there and what works for your culture. Because I can almost bet, and it's been both large healthcare systems that I've worked with and then some of the others that I've consulted with, the style with the Secret Service and the coily earpiece is not it. It's not being seen, very assessment driven, advance driven. The more planning you can do, the better to make for a smooth visit. That's going to help you for those things. Also VIP patient visits as well, visiting heads of state, visiting celebrities. That's what they want. They want that smooth transaction, high customer service, and not so much the speaking into your wrist and dark sunglasses and all of that stuff that comes up there. So really investing in that here. We had worked on that as well at Spectrum Health as well. I mean, just being proactive, trying our best to be proactive and not always reactive. I think that's one of the mandates of security. And when we mentioned after September 11th, we've got to get ahead of this and be constantly a step ahead at all times.
Awesome stuff. Now, as we wrap up, do you have a message that you'd like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Not too much that I already just said. Find a mentor, no matter how old or experienced you are, you've got them. Make sure you've spent time with them. Because I think COVID-19 is causing a lot of burnout. So if I would say that, it's keep doing what you love. I do some things on the side. I DJ, I run an Airbnb. So it's not just the golf course. Keep doing what you love, if it's music or a hobby or what have you. Find a mentor, be a mentor. We need it. This is an amazing career field that you and I and many others that you've had on and will have on have found. We've got to make the next people see that as well. And they won't do it if we're just in the weeds with our operation and not also focusing on our relationships that we can build with as well.
Awesome. And what are the best ways for us to connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I love that. Send me a connection. And if I see IAHSS or if you mention this, I'll be glad to join your network and you can join mine. Email as well. My private one that I always keep with me is seanboney@gmail.com, SEANBONEY@gmail.com. And those are the two best ways that I think we can connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time today, Sean. I really appreciate it. And, I got a lot out of the conversation. I hope everyone else did as well.
Again, my pleasure. I'm humbled and honored to be here among this great community that we have.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Don't forget our 50th episode is right around the corner. To be involved with the giveaways, follow us on social media to stay up to date with what's happening. Also, feel free to join my text community. To join, all you have to do is text START to 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042. Thanks for listening to the Healthcare Security Cast, and until next time, stay safe and take care.